So as part of this video, what I want to do, whatever that we did in the last video, we're just going to take it one step further, where our v4 rewrite kind of becomes usable, such that I can even publish a beta version and you can install it if you like. So let's start from this place where we did the scales, right? Scales.ts and chords.ts. So these are the two files that we made, scales.ts and chords.ts. And what we did was we created scale maps and chord maps in these files. And along with that, we also exported all the chords together, and same with the scales, all the scales. Okay, maybe we can change this a bit. Yeah, so this is what we did, but I'm not so happy about having these two separate files. And at the same time, what that led to was to create the chord and scale methods within max.ts. That's what we did. And we imported scale maps and chord maps from scales and chords. And then we created the scale method inside max. And now this is like a complete, mixing of concerns. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a new file, and I want to call it, what should I call it? Scales and chords.ts. Okay, as simple as that. And in there, I'm going to bring in this whole object, this object literal that has all the scale maps as well as all the chords within it. So now I have all the scales and all the chords together in one place. The other thing I want to do is I want to create these scale and chord methods within that scales and chords, because that's what we created the file for, right? So we can cut it out of here and then paste it over here. Once that is done, I want to make sure that I'm pulling the scale maps and chord maps as well as the scales and the chords from scales and chords and not from the existing scale.ts and chord.ts. So we can delete this from here. We don't need the scales.ts. There is this build process over here. So let me just take it from here and move it way down over here. We will move it to some folder later on. I don't want to deal with it right now. And same with the chords. We have a method here that generates the chord maps, which is commented out because this is a one-time process, and I might move it elsewhere. I might even create a separate node module for this. I don't know right now. So what this entails us is we can comfortably delete chords.ts, and then we can delete scales.ts, and only depend on scales and chords.ts. The next step would be to utilize those within here. So for example, get chord is coming from chord right now, and if it's get chord that we need, then we can use chord from scales and chords. So we're going to replace this get chord with chord. So let's see what are the occurrences of this. This is get chord. For some reason we have this chord defined over here, and once we change this to chord, this is going to lose meaning. So we'll call this C and C dot length return C. And another instance of get chord. Okay, there is no other instance of get chord, so we can delete this. So this is inside clip.ts. We just replaced the get chord with just chord. That's what we did. Similarly, we want to do this. What about ARP? Yeah, ARP is using it. So how about import chord from scales and chords, and wherever there is get chord, let's replace that with just chord. And for this chord, right, this chord word over here, we don't want it to clash, so we'll make it C this we will change to chord. And I think that's it, right? Yeah. Scales and chords is showing some error. What is it? Util. Okay, we need util. So import util from JS Midgen. So now this util is coming from JS Midgen and there's no error over here. So yeah, so we are good with this. And then what else is left? Progression. Progression might be using chords. Yes, using get scale. Okay, let's switch that with scale and use scales and chords. And wherever we had get scale, let's change that with just scale. Okay, that was the only occurrence. So what we have effectively done is we have removed the direct usage of tonal. We have used tonal by all means, and we have built out some things which act as like a dumbed down version of all the scales and all the chords that we are taking from tonal, because tonal has a whole lot of things within itself and we don't necessarily need all of that functionality. So we're just taking what we need and exporting that out, and for that we are using tonal. But my goal is to make tonal a dev dependency. And why are we doing this? It's because the JavaScript engine in Max for Live is a bit rudimentary and we don't want to spend too much time in polyfilling. Hence we are simplifying wherever we can. We are simplifying the usage of libraries to the point where we have a bare minimum JavaScript going out. Okay, so that explains it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go on to the next step, and it's quite possible that I'm going to encounter some issues, but we'll get there when we get there. So let's start with npmt. Let's see if the tests are failing or are they passing. Okay, something failed. Okay, F sharp. So we know this is a result of tonal preferring sharps and V preferring flats. So F sharp is the same as G flat. Hence what we can do is we can just go to clip.spec and look for F sharp and change all the occurrences of F sharp, there are only two, to G flat. Go back to the test. Okay, one more failure. There's no chord such as M-4 because we exchanged the hyphen with the underscore in the rewrite. So let's go back to the tests for arp.spec. Let's look for a hyphen. This becomes an underscore, this becomes an underscore. Let's see what's the failure count on this one now. 2 failed, 6 passed, 4 failed, 4 skipped, 2 and 4. That's what we need to remember. Okay, 1 and 1. One more similar use case, and that's in clip.spec. There it is. All good. Now moving on. Let's close all of this. The next thing I want to do is I want to create 3 build targets and 3 entry points. Let's open up webpack config. In here we have this method called getOutput for output, and based on the target defined in the run script, like for example we have a run script called build browser. In there we set the target specifically to browser. This webpack looks for those kind of targets and updates few things in the config. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a similar thing for the entry, this entry. So let's start simply by, okay, let's first start by building this thing out. Okay, all good. There are some warnings, but we'll ignore them for now. So coming back to the webpack config, I want to start off with creating a method called const get entry. And at the moment what it's going to do is it's just going to return this. And to make it a bit more towards what we want to do, so this is going to be the default main, and now we don't need this, and we'll just override it over here. So for example, let's take the if condition from here. If the target is browser, we want to change the entry point, and I'm sure there is a better way of doing this in Webpack, but I don't know what it is right now, so I'm not going to bother too much about it. In case of browser, we're going to create a new file called let's copy this format, and we'll simply call it browser index. And for max, if it is a max for live setup, like if the target is max, because we're going to create 3 targets, we'll use max hyphen index. Obviously max doesn't exist right now, so we can quickly create one. So build browser, right? Let's make this max, build max. And then for the build process, we'll combine node, browser and max. So let's just copy this over here, paste it, and call this max. So now we have 3 build targets and 3 build entry points. Let's just use this get entry over here, and I think we're good. Now all we need is to create these entry points, browser index.ts and max index.ts. Let's create those. Browser index.ts and then max index.ts. Let's start with max. We're just going to copy stuff out of index.ts to start with, move it to max.index, and only stick to things which are relevant over here. So clip is relevant, add chord, get chords, and all of this is going to come from a single place. So let's make it that way. Chords, scales, maybe we can start with scales, chords, scale, singular, oops, scale, what the hell, chord, singular again, and we don't need this. Instead of this we need scales and chords. Clip can continue to be there. Chord degrees, progression, I hope we changed things in progression. Yes, we did. So all this remains the way it is. We are in max index, so we don't need session, so the browser stuff is gone by default. Rest of it, MIDI, we don't even need MIDI over here. So we export scale and maybe scale as mode to retain the API. Clip, get chord degrees, progression, ARP, MIDI we don't need, session we don't need. We don't need because we are exporting this, or we are creating this entry point only for max for live. And similarly for browser index, we're just going to copy again from here, paste it. Actually, let me first correct this over here so that I can chords, so that I can utilize the, so that we can use the scale and chords.ts file for these exports. Get scale, we don't need this, we can just remove it. Scale becomes mode as well, and modes as well. Chord is chord, so we don't need this. So add chord, okay, so this add chord is getting sacrificed in all of this, but that's fine, we'll deal with it, we'll come to it when we come to it. Clip is already here. This we can remove this. Now this is inside index, which means we don't need session and we don't need max, because this target is for terminal based applications, so it doesn't need max and it doesn't need browser stuff. Now let's copy all of this and move it to browser index. Now once we've got it to the browser index, we don't need max. MIDI, we want MIDI. Rest of it also we want. I'm not sure about progression and all that, but maybe we'll just leave it behind. Max we can remove. So now we have 3 entry points: browser index, max index, and index. All of these 3 are sharing common functionality to create 3 build targets, which we have set up in Webpack. And those 3 targets are the index.js, which is basically what gets installed when you do npm install Scribbletune, the browser target, which exports a Scribbletune.js file which goes to CDN.js. This is not the preferred way of using Scribbletune, but this is a quick and dirty way made available so that somebody can get started with Scribbletune with relatively less code or less investment in terms of time for getting started. And obviously we have max for life, which I haven't created a target for in the outputs. Let's just add that. All we need to do is just remove all of this and make this max.js. Just like index.js, we'll have a max.js, and once somebody installs Scribbletune, these 3 files will be available. Now we go for npm run build. Now all 3 are going to execute and hopefully create a couple of additional files. If there are any errors, we'll fix them. Oh, what is this? We don't need this. This is inside clip. We are going to have a separate entry point for the browser clip, so we don't need this. And what we can do is we can copy this stuff for now and move it to browser clip. But ideally we would have liked this exported out separately, and common functionality could be grabbed from there. For now we'll just leave it as is. Just copy this, move it to browser clip. Grab this, and then wherever we are exiting for browser clip, till that point we'll copy the code again. So yeah, we are copying a bunch of stuff and duplicating, but it's fine for now, and we don't need this anymore. And one small change we'll do is we'll just call this clip. There's no need to call it browser clip anymore. Export const clip, and hence in browser index also it will be imported from browser clip instead of the regular clip, if that makes sense. Now let's run npm run build again. Okay, one failure. What is this? Cannot find name Chord. This is inside browser clip.ts. Okay, Chord. Okay, we did not bring in Chord from here, so let's do that. That's the only thing left, I guess. Going back to npm run build. All tests pass. Okay, so some warnings, but all good. And what I want to do is now I want to verify whatever that we have done so far has indeed resulted into, at least at a code level, that it has resulted into something that we want. So one of the things that we wanted was to generate this max.js file in the root. Where is it? Oh, it went to dist for some reason. Okay, we can delete that. We don't want it in dist. Dist only should have the Scribbletune.js file. So let's go back to Webpack config. Oh, that's the reason. Okay, let's do npm run build again. All good. Let's go back and verify. So I was expecting max.js. Here it is. And max.js should have only our scale and chord maps, not the entire tonal library. So that's check number 1. And it looks like, yeah, it hasn't gotten any tonal functionality within it. And then let's verify the index.js itself. It shouldn't have any browser stuff, which means it shouldn't have session. It doesn't have session. It shouldn't have any max stuff, which means it shouldn't have the keyword live. it doesn't have that. And finally we look at Scribbletune JS, which is inside dist, and make sure that there's no max stuff in there, which means no live stuff. Yeah, there it is, not there. And at the same time it shouldn't have any tonal library stuff in here. Yeah, doesn't look like it has, and then the file size has also gone down. Okay, perfect. So at this point we have a rudimentary v4 ready. Let's make a commit. Let's add these files. Okay, so there we have it. We have version 4 to some extent, and I think this is good. The next video we will verify all these changes have worked as expected, but for now I think this is good. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.